Hi everyone, in this week's dispatch we're focusing on a question I was asked by a client about maternity leave and certain benefits which do or don't continue to accrue during that period. Um, Remuneration is suspended, we know that during maternity leave, so in simple terms an employee won't receive the normal remuneration but will be switched on to statutory or any enhanced maternity pay during that leave. If we look at benefits such as a company car, a laptop, a mobile phone, the key question is whether or not that property can be used for personal use as well as business. If it's just for business use, the benefit can be taken back because obviously the employee won't be working. If there is an element of personal use allowed on something like a phone or a car, though, the employee will be entitled to retain this during the maternity leave period. The question I was asked by my client is a tricky one because it relates to a cash allowance in replacement of a benefit in kind. So in this case, the employee had given up their company car and received a car allowance which was payable by a fixed amount each month in the same manner as salary. Unfortunately, there's very little case law in the area. Car allowances in particular haven't been tested in the courts or tribunals, and we're left trying to decide whether or not a car allowance is there for remuneration, which will be suspended during maternity leave, or whether it amounts to a benefit which will continue to be paid. A cash allowance will only be payable if it can be construed as a benefit other than wages or salary. It means very little to me. Now, car allowances often appear separately to wages on wage slips and are not pensionable. The employee often has a choice between whether they take a company car or a car allowance, and that suggests that the allowance should be treated in the same way as the car itself. An employee simply chosen cash allowance instead of a car, so it should be treated as a benefit. However, in reality, do most employers treat this as the same as wages or salary? The drafting that we tend to use does actually say it's payable in the same manner as salary, and that would support the view that it doesn't have to be paid during maternity leave. Car allowances are treated by HMRC as uplifts on salary and do attract national insurance contributions. If an employee qualifies for maternity pay, any payment that's liable to national insurance contributions has to be taken into account in calculating normal earnings. Now, normal earnings is essentially remuneration, so there's the argument that the car allowance does not need to be paid during maternity leave. It's an extremely tricky area and one which is uncertain, and I think for that reason we tend to say, for the sake of the maternity leave period, err on the side of caution and pay the allowance if you're able to do so. Just a couple of other ancillary points on maternity leave as well. Holiday accrual, unequivocally answered through case law over time, and particularly EU case law, so watch this space. It could be amended when the European legislation is altered or removed. But holiday accrual will continue at contractual level during both ordinary and additional maternity leave. That includes bank holidays as well, so employees will not have the opportunity to take bank holidays during the maternity leave. It must be added on to the end, and of course that also means that the employee has the entitlement to carry over any unused leave from one year to the next if they've been prevented from taking it by virtue of that maternity leave. One of the other tricky areas, I'm not going to get into bonuses or pensions on this video, but pay rises during the maternity leave period. So statutory maternity pay is based on the employee's average earnings during an 8-week reference period ending with the qualifying week, so the 15th week before childbirth. Following the case of Alabaster, this now confirms that a pay rise given before the end of maternity leave is treated for calculating maternity purposes as if it's been backdated to the start of that reference period. So if, for example, in week 39 of an employee's maternity leave, or even week 51 or 52, the company gives a pay rise which would have applied to that employee, what you're then required to do is to go back to the reference period, so the 8-week period before 15 weeks before childbirth, and recalculate any increase in maternity entitlement that might apply. Typically, that's going to affect the first 6 weeks, which is paid at 90% of earnings, and that does unfortunately put that employee in the position of benefiting from the pay rise earlier than other colleagues, but that is the state of the law. The government were forced to amend the maternity regulations after the Alabaster case. So if there are any pay rises given, just be aware that we might need to go back and recalculate maternity pay. So I hope you found that video helpful. If you do need any further support, visit the website chadwicklawrence.co.uk or email employmenthub@chadlaw.co.uk. Thank you.